Reggio di Calabria, commonly known as Reggio Calabria Listen or simply Reggio in southern Italy, is the biggest city and the most populated comune of Calabria, southern Italy. It is the capital of the province of Reggio Calabria and the seat of the Regional Council of Calabria. Reggio is located on the toe of the Italian peninsula and is separated from the island of Sicily by the Strait of Messina. It is situated on the slopes of the Aspromonte, a long, craggy mountain range that runs up through the center of the region, the third economic center of mainland southern Italy. The city proper has a population of more than 185,000 inhabitants spread over 236 square kilometers, while the fast-growing urban area numbers 260,000 inhabitants. About 560,000 people live in the metropolitan area, recognized in 2009 by Italian Republic as a metropolitan city. As a major functional pole in the region, it has strong historical, cultural and economic ties with the city of Messina, which lies across the strait in Sicily, forming a metro city of less than 1 million people. Reggio is the oldest city in the region, and despite its ancient foundation Rho Eta Gamma Iota Omicron Nu was an important and flourishing colony of Magna Graecia. It boasts a modern urban system, set up after the catastrophic earthquake on 28 December 1908, which destroyed most of the city. The region has been subject to earthquakes. It is a major economic center for regional services and transport on the southern shores of the Mediterranean. Reggio, with Naples and Taranto, is home to one of the most important archaeological museums, the prestigious National Archaeological Museum of Magna Graecia, dedicated to ancient Greece. Reggio is the seat, since 1907, of the archaeological superintendents of Bratium and Lucania. The city has two recently founded universities, the Mediterranea University and the Università Pastranieri. There are also an Academy of Fine Arts and a Conservatory of Music. The city centre, consisting primarily of Liberty buildings, has a linear development along the coast with parallel streets, and the promenade is dotted with rare magnolias and exotic palms. Reggio has commonly used popular nicknames, the City of Bronzes, for the Rios bronzes which are testimonials of its Greek origins, the City of Bergamot, which is exclusively cultivated in the region, and the City of Fata Morgana, an optical phenomenon visible in Italy only from the Reggio seaside. The city was an Italian candidate to become the European Capital of Culture in 2019. History. Etymology. During its 3,500-year history, Reggio has often been renamed. Each name corresponds with the city's major historical phases. Rhaetian name appeared on the most ancient coins retrieved in Reggio. Erythra, the pre-Greek settlement populated by the Italic people. Rhegion, the Greek city from the Archaic Age to the Magna Graecia Age, from the 8th to the 3rd centuries BC. Fabii, a short period under Dynagas II, in the 4th century BC. Regium, its first Latin name during the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC, then became Regium. Regium Julium, as a noble Roman city during the Imperial Age. Riva, Arabic name under the short domination by Emirate of Sicily, between 10th and 11th centuries. Riza, under the Normans, between the 11th and 12th centuries. Regols, Aragonese name under the Crown of Aragon, in the late 13th century. Reggio or Regia, usual Italian name in the Middle and Modern Age. Reggio di Calabria, post-Italian unification. The toponym of the city is perhaps derived from Chaldean word rek or maybe from the Greek one rhenami, referring to the straits between Calabria and Sicily as a break in the land. Ancient times. The origins of the ancient city of Reggio merge into the mists of mythology and the meanderings of archaeology. From the late 3rd millennium BC onwards until the 8th century BC, it was inhabited by peoples such as the Osci, Phoenicians, Trojans, Mycenaeans and Achaeans, then Bienotrians, Ligures, Ozones, Mamertines, Tauranes, Sicels, Morgetta and Atali. We know that the sculptor Laerchos was at Reggio at the end of the 15th century BC, and that Iokastos was king of Reggio at the beginning of the 13th century BC. After Cumae, Reggio is one of the oldest Greek colonies in southern Italy. The colony was settled by the inhabitants of Chalcis in 730 or 743 BC on the site of the older settlement, Erythra, meaning the Red One. This dated back to the 3rd millennium BC and was perhaps established by the Ozones. The last Ausonian ruler was King Italos, from whom the name of Italy is derived. The land round Reggio was at first known as Saturnia or Neptunia and then Italia, which in Roman times became the name of the whole peninsula, but in those days corresponded only to present-day southern Calabria, which was also known later as Bratium. King Iokastos is buried on the Punta Calamisi promontory, called Palantion, where Greek settlers later arrived. The colony retained the earlier name of Region. Under Greek rule, Reggio became a polis of Magna Graecia. It was governed by the Messenians, from 737 to 461 BC, by Syracuse from 387 to 351 BC, when it was known as Phoebe, and then by the Campanians, although for a time in the 5th–3rd centuries BC, it was also a republic. Reggio was one of the most important cities in Greater Greece, reaching great economic and political power during the 5th and 6th centuries BC under the Anaxilas government. Anaxilas allowed Reggio to rule over all the Messina Strait, including Zancle, region later allied with Athens during the Peloponnesian War, until 387 BC when the city was taken by the Syracusans. Later, the polis of Region reached great artistic and cultural heights, as is shown by the presence of art, philosophy and science academies, such as the Pythagorean school, and also for its well-known poet, Ibikos, the historian, Ipetian, the sculptor Pythagoras. Many items of archaeological interest from this Hellenic era have been retrieved and are displayed in various places locally. Under the Greek rule, the former Italic culture was amalgamated into the Hellenic before disappearing altogether. As an independent city, Rhegium was an important ally Socionavalus of Rome. During the imperial age it became one of the most important and flourishing cities of southern Italy when it was the seat of the Corrector, the governor of Regia to Lucania a Bratii. During the Roman Empire it was called Regium Julium, and was a noble Roman city. It was a central pivot for both maritime and mainland traffic, reached by the final part of the Via Populia, constructed in the 2nd BC, and joined the older Via Appia at Capua, south of Rome. Close to Reggio, on the Straits of Messina, was the busy port of Columna Regina. Rhegium boasted in imperial times 9 thermal baths, one of which is still visible today. During the whole Latin age, Reggio maintained not only its Greek customs and language but also its mint. In 61 AD the Apostle Saul passed through Rhegium on his final voyage towards Rome, converting the first local Christians and, according to tradition, laying the foundations of the Christianization of Bratium. Due to its seismic activity, the Reggio area was often damaged by earthquakes, such as in 91 BC, when it was destroyed but then was rebuilt by order of the Emperor Augustus. Other memorable shocks took place in the years 305 and 374 AD. Invasions by the Vandals, the Longobards and the Goths occurred in the 5th–6th centuries, and then, under Byzantine rule, Reggio became a metropole of the Byzantine possessions in Italy, and several times between 536 and 1060 AD was also the capital of the Duchy of Calabria. Following wars between the Longobards and Byzantines in the 6th century, present-day Calabria, then known as Bratium, was renamed Calabria. As Reggio was a Byzantine center of culture, certain monks undertook the work of scribes and carried out the transcription of ancient classical works. Until the 16th century, Reggio was one of the most important Greek Rite bishoprics in Italy, and even today Greek words are used and are recognizable in local speech, and Byzantine terms can be found in local liturgy, in religious icons, and even in local recipes. Middle Ages. Numerous occupying armies came to Reggio during the early Middle Ages due to the city's strategic importance. For hundreds of years Reggio was taken by various factions. The Saracens established a self-proclaimed sultanate on the southern Italian coast under Moffeg ibn Salim, which, at its peak, reached from Bari to Reggio and lasted from approximately 853 to 871. Following their expulsion from Italy, the Saracens occupied Reggio in 918 and sold most of its inhabitants into slavery. For brief periods in the 10th–11th centuries the city was ruled by the Arabs and, renamed Riva, became part of the Emirate of Sicily. During the period of Arab rule, various beneficial ideas were introduced into Calabria, such as citrus fruit trees, mulberry trees, and several ways of cooking local vegetables such as aubergines. The Arabs introduced water ices and ice cream, and also greatly improved agricultural and hydraulic techniques for irrigation. The city passed under the crowns of the Normans from 1060 to 1194, when it was called Riza, and of the Swabians from 1194 to 1266. In 1060 the Normans, under Robert Guiscard and Roger I of Sicily, captured Reggio, but Greek cultural and religious elements persisted until the 17th century. In 1234 the town fair was established by decree of the Emperor Frederick II. Reggio, because of its geographical position, was often contested between the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of Sicily. In fact, between 1266 and 1503 Reggio passed between the rule of the Aragonese, who called it Regols, and who, in 1459, enlarged its medieval castle, and also of the Angevins. When life in Calabria deteriorated because of the Angevin tendency to accumulate wealth in their capital, Naples, leaving Calabria in the power of local barons. In the 12th century Reggio became part of the Kingdom of Sicily. In 1282, during the Sicilian Vespers, Reggio rallied in support of Messina and the other Oriental Sicily cities because of the shared history, commercial and cultural interests. For 413 years Reggio was the capital of the Calabrian Giustiziato, from 1147 to 1443, and from 1465 to 1582. It supported the Aragonese forces against the House of Anjou. The city was ranked a Kingdom of Naples. In the 14th century it obtained new administrative powers. Reggio, throughout the Middle Ages, when sometimes it was written as Regia, was first an important center of calligraphy and then of printing. After this was invented, boasting the first dated printed edition of a Hebrew, a Rashi commentary on the Pentateuch, printed in 1475 in Largo Decca of Reggio. Although scholars consider Rome as the city where Hebrew printing began, the Jewish community was also considered to be among the foremost internationally, for the dyeing and the trading of silk. Early modern period. Later came the Habsburgs of Spain. Although Reggio was ruled by a viceroy from 1504 to 1713, the kingdoms of Naples and Sicily were in fact part of the Spanish crown territories. The 16th and 17th centuries were an age of decay due to high Spanish taxes, pestilence, the 1562 earthquake, and the Ottoman Turkish invasions suffered by Reggio between 1543 and 1594. After Barbary pirates attacked Reggio in 1558, they took most of its inhabitants as slaves to Tripoli. In 1714 southern Italy became once more property of the Austrian Habsburgs until 1734, when the Bourbons of Spain took possession. In 1759, Reggio became part of the newly independent Kingdom of Naples. In 1783, a disastrous earthquake damaged Reggio, all southern Calabria and Messina. In 1750, intensive production of the bergamot orange, a citrus fruit that had been cultivated and used in the Reggio area since the 15th century, began. In 1806, Napoleon Bonaparte took Reggio and made the city a duchy and general headquarters. Reggio was the capital of Calabria Ulterior Prima with the Bourbons of Naples from 1759 to 1860. Under the Bourbons, in 1816, the two ancient kingdoms of Naples and of Sicily were unified, becoming the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Late modern and contemporary. On 21 August 1860, during the famous Battaglia di Piazza Duomo, Giuseppe Garibaldi conquered the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Bruno Antonio Rossi was the first in the kingdom to proclaim the new Garibaldi dictatorship and the end of the rule of Francis II. The city, renamed Reggio di Calabria, came under the House of Savoy, which was heavily indebted and who impoverished southern Italy to pay their debts by looting the state coffers and by crushing flourishing local activities such as forestry, mining, boat building, silkworm breeding, silk weaving and agriculture. They also issued laws to eliminate standing scholarships. On 28 December 1908, at exactly 5:21 a.m., the town was hit by a heavy earthquake and shook violently for 31 seconds. Damage was even worse in Messina across the straits. It is estimated that 25,000 people perished in Reggio and 65,000 in Messina. Reggio lost 27% of its inhabitants and Messina lost 42%. 10 minutes after the catastrophic earthquake, those who tried to escape running towards the open spaces of the coast were engulfed by a 10-meter-high tsunami. 3 waves of 6 to 12 meters swept away the whole waterfront. The 1908 Messina earthquake remains one of the worst on record in modern Western European history. During the Second World War, as a result of its strategic military position, it suffered a devastating air raid and was used as the invasion target by the British Eighth Army in 1943, which led to the city's capture. After the war, Reggio recovered considerably. During 1970–71, the city was the scene of a popular uprising, known as the Moti di Reggio, against the government choice of Catanzaro as capital of the newly instituted region of Calabria. The revolt was taken over by young neo-fascists of the Italian social movement, backed by the 'Ndrangheta, a mafia-type criminal organization based in Calabria. The Reggio Calabria protests were the expression of malcontent about cronyism and the lack of industrial planning. Between the 1970s and the 1980s, Reggio went through 20 years of an increase in organized crime by the 'Ndrangheta as well as urban decay. The town is home to several Ndrine, such as the Candello Imitai and the De Stefano Tegano clans, which were involved in bloody wars against each other during this period. The 'Ndrangheta extorts protection money from every shop and viable business in town and has more power than the city council in awarding licenses to retailers. The spiral of corruption reached its zenith in the early 1990s. The sitting mayor at the time, Agostino Licandro, made a remarkable confession reporting suitcases coming into City Hall stuffed with money but going out empty. As a result of the nationwide corruption scandals, most of the city council was arrested. But, since the early 1990s, the so-called Primavera di Reggio, a spontaneous movement of people and government institutions, encouraged city recovery and a renewed and stronger identity. The symbol of the Reggio Spring is the Lungomare Falcometer, the seaside boulevard named after Italo Falcometer, the centre-left mayor who initiated the recovery of the town. On 9 October 2012, the Italian government decided to dissolve the city council of Reggio Calabria for infiltration by the 'Ndrangheta. The move came after some councillors were suspected of having ties to the powerful crime syndicate Under the 10-year centre-right rule of Giuseppe Scopoli mayor from 2002 to 2010, it is the first time that the entire government of a provincial capital has been dismissed over suspected links to organised crime. 3 commissioners will run the city for 18 months until a new election. Earthquakes in history. Reggio has been destroyed by earthquakes several times over the centuries, such as in 91 BC, after which the city was reconstructed by order of the Emperor Augustus, followed by another earthquake in the year 17 AD, yet another one in 305 AD, and again another in 374. The earthquake of 1562 destroyed the natural, medieval port of the city and brought about the submersion of the Calamity promontory, known in ancient times as the Palantian, where, we are told, the first Greek settlers, the Chalcidici, had set foot. The particularly devastating earthquake of 1783 and that of 1908, which was the worst natural calamity to take place in Europe in human memory, both profoundly altered the urban aspect of the city, due to the successive rebuilding which gave the present-day layout of straight, intersecting roads, planned by Giovan Battista Mori in 1784 and by Pietro da Nava in 1911. But some town planning policies at the time were decided upon with no respect for the architectural history of Reggio, as is shown by the demolition of the remaining Norman part of the castle, following the last big earthquake in 1923.